movement of the kettlebell swing, and it's differentiated from a squatting movement in that butt goes back, and it's all about what the pelvis is doing. So butt goes back and body hinges, that's the joint we're hinging on, and then butt comes forward and everything realigns. Different than a squat in that I sit down and up. So it's back and forth instead of down and up. Pushing versus pulling. Squat pushes and the hinge pulls. So starting with that, for most people, it works a lot better to start their hinge with a wider, more of a straddle stance than a narrower stance. Why? It's easier to access your hips this way. So start with a straddle, engage your center, so create some tension in your center. Find your line. Everything should be stacked and neutral on top of your heels, from your ears down to your heels, stacked. And then the first thing to move is the pelvis, slides back. So find your bottom point of your hinge. You should feel your hamstrings engage, hammies on the way back. Lift your toes, push through your heels, squeeze your butt on the way up. So hammies back, butt brings you up. And why there? Because it's easiest to feel your hammies when you're sliding back. You'll feel them stretch and elongate, engage. And then it's easiest to feel your glutes, your butt, as you squeeze them as you come back up. One way to confirm your spine line, that is your standing stacked position, is to take a broomstick or a stick of sorts and just hold it at the small of your back. And I'm keeping contact with the back of my head, my upper spine right in between my shoulder blades, and then my tailbone, my sacrum. From here, I'm going to slide back and forth without losing contact. So what this is cueing me is to not round my back. One of the reasons the hinge is so important is because unless you learn this movement, our tendency is when we bend over to grab things is to bend over with our knees and our back, knees and back. And this is all going to load right into my lower back, and that's why I'm going to have back pain. That's why I'm going to have back strains, throwing things out. That's why I'm going to be scared of lifting things and moving them around. So starting with the movement of transferring weight, this hip hinge transfers all of the weight back to my hips, and it gets it out of my upper body. So I don't just stop the weight and load it here. All I'm going to feel here is some knees and a whole bunch of lower back. So I'm going to transfer the weight down to my legs, and I'm going to hang from my hamstrings and bring it back up. Another way of securing your upstairs position is to put your hands in the small of your back. So if you don't have a stick in place, you can use hands in the small of your back to confirm that same position. So the next thing we do, once we get lots of reps of those in, it may take hundreds of those reps before you really feel like you're connected to it, is that we start putting a weight in hand. Same things apply. We're going to straddle on top of it. So don't just stand on top of it. Nice wide straddle. Confirm your standing alignment. And then when you pick it up, you're going to use your glutes to bring it up, hammies to lower it down. Glutes up, hammies back. Notice that my spine line doesn't change at all as I lift up and down. Notice also that the weight stays in front of my stance, not out in front of me. So I'm not lifting with the weight out in front of my toes. This is going to go into my back. I'm keeping the weight inside of my stance. So I'm keeping it inside of my foot, in the center of my feet, because that's where my center of balance is. So that's a straddle deadlift. These can also be, especially if you have really tight hamstrings and it's hard to get all the way down there, this can be, you can do a hanging version of this lift while we're working on getting a little more range out of your hamstrings. So that just means not touching the ground in between each rep. This can also be useful when we begin doing these a little more continuously. With the kettlebell, we're gonna not lift and lower, but we're gonna throw and catch. And this has that same feeling of catching in my hips and then throwing it back up that the kettlebell swing will have. Once you've done a number of those reps, again, it may take hundreds, it may take sessions, then we'll start adding the backward and forward motion. The reason this movement is so difficult is that the weight is always in motion, and it's in motion quickly. So when you do something fast, it adds a lot of complexity to being able to do it well. So don't rush to swinging the weight. When your back is ready, when you are ready, that's the time to start adding that in. Don't rush to get it. All of the work you do beforehand will build plenty of strength and plenty of movement around the hip hinge. So there's no rush to getting to the swing. When you're ready, the first swing is a low swing. You keep that straddle stance. Keep that stance as long as you need to stay connected to the swing. But a low swing is just what it sounds like. I am not going to try to swing the weight. Here, I'm effectively swinging the weight, I'm accomplishing my goal, but I'm doing it with really bad mechanics. So I only care about moving back and forth with the weight, not how high up the weight comes. So I'm catching it. Right now I'm completely synced. My pelvis and the weight are synced up and moving together. When the bell goes back, I go back. When the bell comes forward, I come forward. And I'm trying to find just a little bit of hamstring engagement on the way back, and then active glutes, and abs as much as I need, especially at the outset. If you're worried about hurting your back, keep tension throughout there. You'll find as you progress and get stronger and more able at this, you'll find places where you can have relaxation and tension within the movement. But at the outset, feel free to use excess tension to help control and stabilize that. So we move from lifting straight up and down to throwing with a curve. So we jump from algebra over to calculus. It's a big jump. Don't worry if you have to go back and do some more reps in a previous step before moving forward on the next one. There's no rush, plenty of time to learn, and give yourself permission to learn as long as it takes.